Hey everyone, in this video we are going to be using the 3D modeler named Asset Forge to create a simple 3D maze. There are two purposes for this video. One, I'm going to be creating this maze for those of you who have never seen Asset Forge, and this will give you a hands-on tutorial. So rather than someone just talking about the functionality, you can actually see a project from beginning to end. Two, this is for the folks who watch my Unity videos. I'll be using the final asset made with this project in an upcoming project. From time to time, they've asked me to actually show them how I make the models that I use, so this will help them when that project finally comes to fruition. So, before we begin, I just want to say that although I try to cover applications that are free to use, Asset Forge is not free to use, but it's very inexpensive. Yes, that is a relative term, but it's a one-time purchase, $20 USD. That's it. So I personally consider that inexpensive. You can decide for yourself if you feel that is worth it. But yes, a one-time purchase price of $20, I believe it's on Itch.io, is where you can purchase this. The other thing I want to mention is that unlike other 3D modelers, this does not give you the minute control over vertices and facings and things like that. Instead, you have the building blocks, which you can see over on the left here, and hopefully over time they add more. And it's just a matter of clicking on one of these, and then you just drop it into the scene, just like that. Okay. Now, let's delete that one. Also, for my Unity viewers, one block here is equal to one block in Unity, so it translates really well. Okay, so we're going to make a 3D maze. So what we're going to do, we're going to actually just drag the blocks from here and line them up on the side here. That way I don't have to keep menu surfing, and then I can just duplicate them from here as I need them. So let's change the drop down from all to walls. Oh, and by the way, as far as navigating the 3D environment, if you press down and hold the scroll wheel and then you move left and right or forward and back, that's how you pan in the various directions. Pan left to right, zoom in and out. If you right click and hold and move the mouse, that's how you rotate the camera. So for walls, we want to have a basic wall. We'll put that one over here. And again, that's one of the nice things about having this building block approach. You can drop everything into the scene that you need. It's tougher to do that with other 3D modelers. It messes things up sometimes. So we have that. We're going to take the wide doorway. That's going to be the way out. And again, positioning over here doesn't matter. I'm just, like I said, trying to get them out of the menu. We are going to use a wall corner. And we're going to actually use a damaged wall as well. And then we're going to go over to, I believe it's the swords menu, and we're going to use, let's use the blade top. We're going to actually use this for an arrow. We'll just shrink it down, but we'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so now for the most part, we can ignore the menu over here because we've already placed all the objects that we need. So if I want multiple versions or multiple duplicates of an object, what I can do is I select it, and then I press Control D. That should sound familiar to some of you. If you notice up here, it said one block was duplicated. Control D will duplicate an object. So good time as any as to look at the rotation and transform controls. So these four dots surrounding it, as well as this dot and this dot, that's how you scale the object. So this scales it along this axis. This scales it along this axis. This scales it along that axis. Next, the up and down arrows do just that. It moves it up and down on the vertical axis. And then this is the middle one, this middle arrow. It will move it left and right, forward and back along those axes. Okay, so let's go ahead and move that one out. Now, the first thing you're going to notice is that it moves in consistent, oh, I don't think I mentioned that, sorry. Scroll wheel scrolls in and out, zooms in and out. So this snaps to the grids for the most part. You'll notice some overlap, but that overlap will be covered up by another object. Now let's take our exit and let's put it over here. And we want people facing it. We want it to be facing the people if they're coming down this corridor. So let's rotate this. So up here, you'll see there is a rotate symbol. This will rotate it. But see this here? This changes what you're rotating on. Are you rotating on the X, Y, or Z? Okay, so like if I click this now, that's actually the way that I want it to rotate. And if you notice, it rotated 45 because after 2 rotations, it was 90. It's perpendicular. So that brings us to the next thing I want to mention right here. See the rotation symbol? That's telling you how many degrees it rotates. You can click on this and change it. There's actually a button here for minus, a button here for plus. For whatever reason, whoever designed the UI decided to use a dark gray on a black background. But if you click on this, you can see it changes. So 50, we'll send it back to 45. You can set that to whatever you want. I think 45 is a good number because I tend to either want something to be perpendicular or at a 45-degree angle. It works really easy for math is one of the reasons why those numbers are good. Okay, so using the middle tool here, we're just sliding this. And by the way, it's moving 1/10 of a block at a time. That's something else that can be changed in the UI. And we'll move this here. And you can see that those corners disappear. In fact, one of the options that you have when you export this project, you have the option to merge everything into one block. So you may want to do that. Now, the outside here, depending on the aesthetic, you might not like. But if this is the inside of the maze, then the player won't even see that because presumably once they get to the doorway, that's it. You know, that's the you win scene. So now what we're going to do, we're going to make this a hallway. So we're just going to Alt-D, move that down. And again, you can see the point merged together. Alt-D, and you can hold Shift to keep it to one axis, which is also common. And we don't want this to be too complex, so that's fine for this hallway. So you can also duplicate multiple objects. So I'm going to hold Shift click, and then Alt-D, hold Shift to keep it on that axis, and there you go. So now you have a nice little hallway. Now what we can do, let's have the entryway. Let's grab the corner. I'll show you how this works. So say you want a corner like that, but say that you want another corner. Well, we can rotate like we said. So Alt-D, slide that over, and now you rotate it. Now, maybe we've changed our mind. Maybe we say, okay, we don't want a corner here. Well, we want a corner, but we want people to see through it. So what we can do is we can delete that corner. We can duplicate that, scroll that out, and then let's take the one with a hole in it. We'll bring that over. We'll rotate that one. So just like that, you've been able to modify it and it doesn't break anything. Some applications you couldn't do that with, that you would, because this would be one continuous object, it would break it. But because it still treats it as components, it doesn't break it. So the idea is that someone will be traveling this way and they'll be able to see through and say, okay, there's the exit, that's where I need to get to. But you might say, well, you know, that hole's kind of big, that might annoy the player because they might say, why can't I climb through that? So what you can do, select that, Alt-D, and now we shrink that down. So we'll grab the top block, shrink that down twice, shrink the bottom up twice, the left twice, and the right twice. And again, having overlapping blocks do not create an issue. In fact, what you could kind of do, you could maybe bring this in even a little bit more or move it a little bit so you can see like a little bit of the other hole there as well. That way it really looks like it's been damaged if you think that this looks a little bit too clean. Like if I do that, like see, you can see the hole behind it, but it's just kind of a nick and it doesn't, well, actually that one does go all the way through. But you get the idea. You could do things like this so it's not so obviously just a single shape. And again, it's your game. You can do whatever you want. You can, whatever you think looks right to you. There we go. So now we've got, and actually, yeah, that one does go through all the way, but not by much. Okay, so what's happening is someone can be traveling this way. They can't get through this, but it shows them that that is the exit. So what we want to do, we will build a path here. So actually, let's take Alt-D, and let's rotate this guy. Here we go. So when people walk past this, they can turn and see that that's the right way to go. And again, the idea, it's not just a simple project, but it's also meant to be a simple game. It's not meant to be a mind bender. But it also brings up a point about game development, and that is you shouldn't just randomly design an environment. You have to design it visually. You have to think about what the player is going to experience. So it's not just about coming up with dead ends. It's about giving them, when it makes sense, these little cues to get them to where they need to go. So we just rotate that. Put that here. So again, thinking about the traveling. And then you could do something like, let's copy this wall here. So I'm going to hold Shift while I'm clicking on those. Alt-D to duplicate. Bring that out. And let's take this corner. Alt-D to duplicate. Rotate that. And that's the starting area. So basically, you're going to spawn like in a dead end here, and you travel out. And if this seems simplistic, basically, it's just to demonstrate collision detection, and it's going to demonstrate the idea of first-person controllers. So that's why this is so simple. But I figured I'd throw in a few flourishes like that. And then maybe you could do something like have duplicate that. Move that one over, but let's rotate this. And we'll move this over. Let's rotate that some more. So basically what you're doing is you're giving people a choice. Like they could go this way, or they could go this way. So maybe you could do, again, give people a hint. We'll take this arrow. Let's raise it up. That we're going to do. Now you could do this with a texture, but I'm going to do it just using another 3D object. So first of all, let's flatten this out a bit. It's fairly thin, so it's not that great for flattening. Now what we do is we want to rotate this. So we'll click on rotate, and actually that's not the rotation we want. So let's undo that. And actually, see, it undoes too much because it undid the flattening as well. So I don't know if you have to click away for it to be completed, but I've noticed that sometimes it undoes a few things. So let's see if I clicked on that to change the axis again. There we go. That's what we want. And now we can just move this against the wall. So the idea is you're just straight up drawing an arrow. Now let's go to another tool that I haven't mentioned. So up here you see 3. So if we click on this one, you can actually see the position, the rotation, the scale. So now if I move it this way, you can see which one changed. Z changed. So let's make this, and it changed in a positive direction, so let's make it like 5, 3. Let's make that 5, 4. There you go. So now you've got this nice arrow on the wall pointing out where to go, which leads us into the next menu. If we click on this, what you can do is you can give this a custom texture. So let's click on, let's do green. We'll just select a green there, and then you just click on the object. It's a little bit odd. It's a little off-putting because you don't see like a selection. It just responds to your click, but that's the way that works. So now you've seen all 3 main menus here. And now it's really just finishing this up. So I might just do a speed through for the rest of this because I don't want to bore you. But basically, the idea is that you just want to give people a few choices. So I may speed up the rest of this, and if I do, then we'll just do a quick closing at the end because you still want to see how to export this into Unity and a few other things. Okay, and I think that should just about do it as far as the making of the 3D model. You can put a floor in here if you want. There's a couple ways you can go about that. You could use the wall as a floor tile. There's really nothing preventing you from doing that. Or what you can do is you could use a block primitive, which I avoided doing because, like I said, I wanted to avoid surfing. But if you come down here to primitives, you could take a block, shrink it down, and use it. These are diamonds, even though they look flat, so can't use those. So that's one thing you could do. You could use a block. Or like I said, you could just tile the bottom. I'm not going to bother doing that in this video. Again, I don't want to bore you, but like I said, if you use a wall, you would just rotate it on another axis. So like it would be that axis. And then you just, connect it like we've been doing right along. Okay, so how to export this? So what you need to do is you go up to File. You want to make sure you save your project as well, because whenever you're working with a 3D modeler, you always have your project file and the separate exported object. So make sure you save your project as well. But you do export model. We'll cover export sprite in another video, but export model, and then it's just a matter of what format do you want. If you've used 3D modelers before, you'll know the differences, but you could just do OBJ. Here's what I was talking about, merge blocks. You can merge all the blocks. You don't have to, but like I said, that could create some overlapping and flickering issues. So merge block would be fine. Export textures, yes. Y is up. The reason why it says that is because that's not always the case. Blender Z is up for some reason. And then the scale. If you leave this as 100, it matches up perfectly with Unity. You then click on Export. You choose a location. I'll do that, and then we'll cut over to Unity. And here we are in Unity. It's as simple as taking the object file and the MTL, so the material file. So you just grab both of those, take both of them, put them into the asset area, and now it's accessible. So if we take maze and just drag and drop it, there's your maze. Now, as you can see, I didn't do the floor. Another option, I'm not trying to go too far into Unity here. You can go to Game Object, 3D Object, Plane, and let's scale that on the X-axis. Let's raise that up. Actually, I probably didn't have to scale it. It was that far down. And then once it meets the bottom, if you expand the prefab here, you'll see that you've got the stone dark material. You can just drag it there, and now you've got the same material on that object. So, and that should about do it. So, the camera angle currently is garbage for this, but it's going to be a first-person game, so we'll actually put the camera here and then people will travel through. So, okay, I hope this has been helpful and interesting. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. At a certain point, I'm going to do a more proper deep dive into Asset Forge, but for those of you who are unfamiliar with it, I think that this was a pretty decent introductory lesson for Asset Forge, and you can make an informed decision as to whether or not you feel this is something that you think would be worth your time and purchasing. So have a good day, and I hope this has been helpful.